The Zephyrian delegation sat in stunned silence as the holographic display showed the latest reports from the Kepler 442 system. Ambassador Thrix's chitinous plates clicked nervously against each other, a sound that echoed through the sterile chamber of the Galactic Council. "The fungal blight has destroyed 97% of their food production," announced Councillor Vex, her scaled hands trembling as she manipulated the data streams. "The Vrixi colony is facing total extinction within 3 rotations." The chamber remained quiet. The Vrixi were a relatively new species to the galactic community, insectoid beings whose young, called hatchlings, required specific nutrients during their first year of life. Without these nutrients, an entire generation would perish, effectively ending their species. "What are the emergency protocols?" asked Ambassador Thrix, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "All nearby systems lack the biocompatible resources," Vex replied. "The Altarians cannot spare their grain reserves due to their own drought. The Centauri Federation is dealing with solar flares that have disrupted their agricultural networks. The mathematics are clear. There is insufficient food within transport range." The silence stretched longer. In the galactic community, species helped their allies, but the Vrixi had no formal treaties. They were newcomers still proving their worth. The brutal calculus of interstellar politics rarely accounted for sentiment. "What about the humans?" asked Councillor Zarn, his voice barely above a whisper. A collective shudder ran through the chamber. Humanity was still considered by many to be an oddity, a species that had somehow stumbled into space travel despite their apparent emotional instability and tendency toward illogical decisions. They were respected for their military capabilities, certainly, but their unpredictable nature made them difficult allies. "The humans?" Thrix's mandibles clicked dismissively. "They have no trade agreements with the Vrixi, no strategic interest in the Kepler system. Why would they waste resources on—" The chamber's communication system chimed. A human face appeared on the central display, weathered features, kind eyes behind primitive optical correctors, graying hair. "Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Corps. Galactic Council," she said, her voice carrying that peculiar human accent that many found grating. "We've received the distress calls from the Vrixi colony. We're already en route with emergency supplies." Ambassador Thrix's head tilted in confusion. "Captain Chen, while we appreciate the gesture, surely you understand that human nutritional requirements are incompatible with Vrixi biology. Your food would be toxic to their hatchlings." Captain Chen smiled, that unsettling human expression that showed teeth. "We're not bringing human food, Ambassador. We've been working with our xenobiologist for the past 18 hours. We've synthesized the exact nutritional compounds the Vrixi hatchlings need." Councillor Vex leaned forward, her scales shifting color with surprise. "That's impossible. Our own scientists estimated it would take months to develop a compatible substitute." "Your scientists aren't desperate enough," Chen replied. "When children are starving, humans tend to find a way. We've converted 3 of our agricultural ships. The first should reach Kepler 4042 in 6 days." The holographic display updated, showing 3 massive human vessels adjusting their trajectories. Each ship was the size of a small moon, their holds filled with enough synthesized nutrients to feed the entire Vrixi population for a full cycle. "The cost of such an operation," Thrix began, "is irrelevant," Chen cut him off. "We'll figure out the economics later. Right now, there are children who need food." Ambassador Thrix's compound eyes fixed on the human captain. "You do realize the Vrixi have nothing to offer in return? No technology, no resources, no strategic value?" Chen's expression grew puzzled as if the question made no sense. "They have children who are hungry. That's enough." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in silence once again. But this time, the quiet carried a different weight. 3 days later, reports began filtering in from the outer rim. Human ships were being spotted throughout the galaxy, not warships, but converted freighters and agricultural vessels. The humans had apparently mobilized their entire merchant fleet. They arrived at Kepler 442 ahead of schedule. The footage from the colony showed Vrixi adults weeping, a sound like wind through crystal caves, as human volunteers in environmental suits distributed nutrient packages to the hatchlings. The young Vrixi, barely the size of human hands, chittered with joy as they consumed the synthesized food that would keep them alive. Captain Chen appeared again on the galactic networks, standing in what appeared to be the colony's main nursery. Behind her, dozens of human volunteers worked alongside Vrixi caretakers, their faces focused with the kind of intensity typically reserved for military operations. "The immediate crisis is over," she reported. "All hatchlings are receiving adequate nutrition. We're establishing sustainable farming protocols to prevent future food shortages." The reporter, a Centauri journalist, asked the question on everyone's mind. "Captain, the financial cost of this operation will bankrupt several human colonies. Why did your species choose to bear this burden?" Chen looked directly into the camera, and for a moment every being watching across the galaxy saw something in her eyes that was uniquely, terrifyingly human. "Because when children are dying," she said quietly, "everything else is just bookkeeping." The transmission ended, but the reverberations continued for months. Within a rotation, 17 species had sent delegations to Earth, requesting formal alliance treaties. The Zephyrian military quietly began joint training exercises with human forces. The Altarian High Command declared humanity to be a species of unprecedented moral character. But it was the Vrixi response that truly shook the galaxy. In their traditional ceremony of debt honor, every adult Vrixi swore a blood oath to humanity. Not just their generation, but their children's children for 1,000 years. They declared that humanity had not merely saved their species, but had shown them what true civilization looked like. Ambassador Thrix, watching the ceremony from his private chambers, finally understood what made humans so dangerous. It wasn't their weapons or their tactics or their stubborn refusal to surrender. It was their absolute inability to let a child starve, regardless of species, politics, or cost. In a galaxy built on calculated self-interest, humanity had just proven that some things transcended math, and that realization would change everything.